Good morning and welcome to Unusual Activity powered by FinancialJuice.com with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. Good Friday morning, the 6th of February 2015. Jobs Day in the U.S. We'll get to that in a moment. Certainly lots happening as always in the markets. No shortage of news and information coming our way. We'll get to everything in just a few moments. S&P futures this morning higher by just about 7 handles at 2062, even again up by 7 handles at 2062 even. We have crude oil rolling along here, folks, above that 50 mark, higher by $1.80 at $52.27. So that's a considerable move, folks, within the last week or so in West Texas Intermediate crude. Getting into the gold at lower now, extending its losses a bit by $16.60 at $1,246 even. We have the 10-year yield moving higher here off the employment numbers at 1.884. So we are back up again above that 1.8 level. We're below that for quite some time. We're seeing that tick up also in the 5-year 1.407. We're seeing the 30-year at 2.459. So we're inching up to that 2.5 mark that we fell below some time back and went into that 2.2 area not too long ago. The dollar strength is rather impressive this morning, certainly on the heels of the employment numbers. The euro, conversely, is lower this morning. Dollar index at 94.179, euro at 1.1389. So folks, let's get into some of the specifics. Let's have a review, a quick review of how activity was in the U.S. In the markets yesterday. Dow Jones higher by 1.20% at 17,884.88. We're slowly, day by day, getting right back to that 18,000 level. S&P 500 at higher by 1.03% at 2062.52. The Nasdaq higher by 1.03% at 4765.10. Again, rather strong across the board yesterday. Really, once we started to inch up in the early trading in the SPX, really continued that momentum, relatively range bound in the afternoon, and really finishing towards the high of the day in the SPX. So folks, let's get into some of what we're watching, as we always do, some of the central themes that we see this morning. Certainly from the geopolitical perspective, we're seeing a few things coming through. One, certainly we're keeping an eye on the Middle East, specifically ISIL. If there's any other news that may be pertinent, that may actually affect markets, and that's what we look for. Not just news, but news that will affect the macro markets, maybe perception. We're keeping an eye on Saudi Arabia. Any specific commentary coming out of there? If there's anything specific that's coming out after the death of the Saudi king. And specifically what we've been talking about for the last few days as it relates to Saudi Arabia, interesting as though after the death of the Saudi king, we see a rather impressive gains in crude oil. Nothing really mentioned, but again, interesting coincidence. we'll leave it as that. But again, interesting dynamics there. Wanted to again on the geopolitical side, also keeping an eye on Greece. We'll get into that in just a moment, and Russia. We'll get into that in just a moment. We'll discuss that in a moment. Let's get into the employment numbers from the U.S. The non-farm payroll numbers obviously were this morning at 8:30. Actual was 257,000, which was rather impressive as you compare this to the estimates. Average hourly earnings month over month were higher by 0.5% versus the expected 0.3%. This is what the Fed watches rather closely. Unemployment rate at 5.7, expected was 5.6, previously was 5.6. So again, a little bit of a tick up on unemployment rate. Private payrolls rise by 267,000, government jobs fall by 10,000. Again, historically, the January number tends to be one of the more volatile numbers, but again, an impressive number nonetheless. And that's something that we will see how the markets interpret this as the morning rolls on. We can tell you after the initial jobless, after the initial non-farm payroll numbers came out, we had a rather significant increase in the S&P futures, a significant increase in the U.S. dollar, and that's something that we want to keep an eye on. Diving into a little bit deeper on the non-farm payroll numbers, manufacturing payrolls for January was 22,000 versus the 12,000 estimated. Prior, revised from 17,000 to 26,000. So even on the revisions, a bit higher. So again, an impressive number all across the board. Participation rate in the U.S. Rises to 62.9% in January from 62.7%. Again, higher than expected. Non-farm payroll, birth versus death rate, minus 275,000 versus the previous minus 15,000. Average hourly earnings in January jumped 0.5%, as we said before. This is the most since November of 2008. And this is really important because we know that the Fed watches this rather closely. So what are we seeing this morning? We'd like to bring up on a daily basis what we consider to be central themes that may affect macro markets, that may affect specific securities, and currencies and energy futures. So let's get into this a bit. Euro, we're seeing consistent volatility in the euro. We now see it's at the 113 handle. We saw yesterday it was in the 114, so a bit of a decline there. We're seeing consistent dollar strength. As we said, the dollar strengthened quite nicely right below that 93.6, right before the number, to right in that 94.333 number where we are. It came back to that number as we speak, right in that initial spike after the non-farm payroll. We're seeing rather impressive oil volatility as of late. I will say since last Thursday, when we had that nice, very interesting tick up in oil towards the end of the day. There was chatter last week as it relates to could there be a strike in the U.S. As it relates to oil producers? We didn't see that. There was, merely chatter. But again, oil did pop on that apparently in that news, but really stabilized above that $50. So we're continuing to look for that. We're continuing to see if there's any more conversation out of central bankers with respect to deflation risk. Certainly the Greek election implication. We're seeing various news coming out of Greece. We certainly know that Tsipras and the foreign the economic minister certainly making the rounds in European Union, speaking to various officials. So we're seeing that as well. Also, some news coming out of that. So also we just got in a few minutes ago, Troika not able to reach agreement with Cyprus on program review. So we're continuing to see some interesting news and anecdotal evidence with respect to Greece. Also, we're keeping an eye on this Treasury yield curve, specifically in the 5-year. A nice tick up in yield in the 5-year, also tick up in yield in the 10-year. We're just below that 1.9 level, and also seeing that 30-year as well, ever so slowly ticking up towards that 2.5 level. Additionally, Russian economy back in focus. We know that the EU and the Russian relationship, European Union officials and Putin, hasn't been a, let's call it a jolly relationship as of late. And so certainly we're looking forward to what happens in this meeting in Moscow, specifically with Angela Merkel and Vladimir Putin. And that's something that's going to be very interesting, an interesting relationship there. We know that there's economic relationships between the two countries. We'll see what develops out of that meeting. Additionally, certainly, we are in earnings season, and we will continue to report on what we're seeing in specific stocks, specific equities. And of course, we discussed the non-farm payroll numbers, the employment situation in the U.S. So again, higher S&P 500 futures. Once we receive those numbers, again, S&P futures higher now by 6 handles even at 2061.25. So again, we'll continue to monitor that. The ES just about 4 points below the high of the morning so far in the S&P 500 futures. Certainly, as we talk about Russia, when we talk about the geopolitical relationships, we want to bring this up again. The relationship between Angela Merkel and Putin has been rather strained. We know that there's economic relationships, but really where this goes from here, should the West position themselves as giving more sanctions to Russia and really limiting them on perhaps capital investments. That's what we look for. Will Russia restrict capital outflows from Russia should the situation get a little bit more dire? We're watching this ruble versus the U.S. dollar, and specifically with Russia, its relationship with China and other countries, as should the Russian relationship with Europe become a bit more strained. So again, lots going on, and that's something that we'll continue to monitor. Let's take a look at overnight markets. We have the Nikkei higher by 0.82% at 17,648.50. Hang Seng lower by 0.35% at 24,679.39. The Shanghai lower by 1.93% at 3,075.91. So a bit of a mixed market in Asia. Let's take a look at where we are in Europe. Certainly, the FTSE currently just a bit above flat, higher by 0.07% at 6870.84. The CAC and pairs lower by 0.05% at 4700.77. The DAX in Germany lower by 0.39% at 10,863.02. And the IBEX in Spain higher by 0.34% at 10,571.30. Before we get into the energy and raw materials and commodities, wanted to bring up this particular slide. We find that it's interesting in terms of analyst opinions, anecdotes, officials, U.S. officials. Certainly, we'd like to keep these up here just to keep them up. See where, for example, oil goes into the future, and perhaps hold their feet to the fire, if you will, on their predictions on specifically oil. So what we have here is at the top of your screen is a list of ETF, ETNs that we like to watch as it relates to oil and underlying oil producers, oil equities that we like to watch, and specifically as oil. Look, it's still rather volatile. We're above that 50 mark. Can oil stabilize here? Should it continue to stabilize here? What's the impact on producers? And really, on a more macroeconomic perspective, what's that impact on CPI and PPI data? And the latest that we put in on the bottom here is from Jim Cramer on oil from CNBC, and basically indicating it's kind of done, quote unquote. I think this is where you buy it. So we'll continue to see where oil goes from here. We do like to bring up these quotes and keep an eye on them, and really see if they're correct or not. So let's get into some of the commodities, energy, and raw materials. We have crude oil higher by $1.02 now, 51.50, a bit off those highs that we were earlier, again at $51.52. Gasoline higher by 0.0235 at 1.5475. Natural gas lower by 0.007 at 2.592, and this is something else that we're watching on the natural gas. Remember, it's been below that 3 level for quite some time, and we'll see how long it can maintain this lower level. Heating oil at 1.8396, higher by 0.0343. Northeast getting a bit of a cold snap as of late, some rather severe weather as of late, so we'll see how that impacts these distillates specifically as it relates to demand. Gold now lower by $21.80, $1,240.80. It broke those support levels of 1250. Now we're looking for possible lows of 1239. In silver, we're now below that 17 level. Again, not many people have been discussing silver, but really rather impressive moves in silver. We went up over $18, now back below $17 at $16.87, lower by 33 cents now. Platinum lower as well by $20 even, excuse me, at $1,229.70, and cocoa higher by $8 at $27.51. Let's get into the yield curve that we like to watch here. When we take a look at, let's take a look at the yield curve here in the U.S. Starting off with the 5-year, we have 1.426, the 10-year at 1.901, and the 30-year at 2.473. So we have a little bit of a tick up in yield, still flatter than we were a little bit over a year ago. So again, something that we're keeping an eye on. But again, higher yield now. The 10 is 1.903. So considerable gains here. A good 25 basis points within the last couple of days here on the 10-year. So rather impressive here, folks. So let's take a look at, let's jump into some of the insider transactions that we're seeing this morning, and then we'll go into, well, actually, let's get into more of the stocks that are moving this morning, and then we'll get into insider transactions and the syndicates. So CLR, let's go one by one here, folks. CLR, we have initiated with an underperform this morning at Jeffries, and we'll bring up the charts here, folks, in pre-market as we get ready for the market in just about just about 10 minutes, a little bit over 10 minutes or so. We'll take a look at CLR. Bear with us as we put up this chart here for you. So this is the 1 minute chart on the CLR. So initially we're looking for CLR currently at indicating about $47. So again, initiated with an underperform at Jeffries. EXAS, Exact Sciences, and Mayo Clinic expand collaboration to continue to fight cancer. So we'll take a look at EXAS, currently indicating $29 in pre-market. We'll see how that goes when trading begins. SWN, Southwest Energy, initiated with a buy at Jeffries, target at 30, currently indicating at $26.97. So that's a considerable tick up. Yesterday's close was just about at that $26.20 as of the close. KORS, certainly Michael Kors, indicating this morning at $70.12. Michael Kors valuation compelling, according to Bernstein. Credit Suisse downgrades Gilead, G-I-L-D. Gilead Sciences currently indicating at $99.11. Lowers price target to $115 from $130 on hepatitis C outlook. On eBay, we have eBay restates quarterly profit to reflect lower income tax. eBay this morning, we're having indication at $54.13 this morning. Twitter indicating $46.30 in pre-market. Price target raised to $65 from $60 at Deutsche Bank. DuPont, price target raised to $88 from $80 at Deutsche Bank. Remember, they had some board member activity yesterday. This morning indicating at $75.57. USG downgraded to neutral from buy at Stern Aggie, currently indicating at $29.19. If you take a look at the chart, interesting that we're getting this downgrade. Stock did have a relatively significant down move towards the last half hour of trading or so. Again, very interesting developments there. BBT. BB&T Corporation indicating this morning at $36.96, initiated with an outperformer Credit Suisse. Yesterday's close was right at that high at $37.11. Again, we're just under 8 minutes for the market open in the New York. HBAN. Huntington Bank shares indicating $10.42, initiated with a neutral at Credit Suisse, target is $11.50. Yesterday's close was just at that $10.31. So again, just about, we're looking about a 10 to 12 cent gain there in pre-market initially. Sprint upgraded to hold from sell at Evercore. currently at $4.87. Yesterday's close were just around the same area there. We'll see how that progresses. YELP, Yelp downgraded to sector perform from outperform at Pacific Crest, currently at indicating pre-market $48.13, off its initial pre-market low of $47.44, again currently at $48.10. ANTM, U.S. state probe massive data breach at health insurer Anthem. We know we were hearing about that yesterday. Currently indicating $135.07. Yesterday's close was just at that $137 and about a quarter, 137.25. So again, we'll see how that develops. Interesting data breach there. Significant data breach, I should say, in Anthem. ZION, Zions Bancorp, initiated with the neutral at Credit Suisse, target of 28. We're seeing initial indication of $25.70. Again, very little activity. Again, we're about 5 minutes away from the U.S. Open. PNNT. PNNT, Pennant Park, upgraded to overweight from neutral at JP Morgan, indicating this morning at $9.13. A bit of an increase since yesterday's close, just at that $8.89 level you see on your chart there. ACAD. Acadia Pharmaceuticals currently indicating a $32.80. Acadia coverage resumed with a buy at Roth Capital. BBY, Best Buy, upgraded to outperform from perform at Oppenheimer. BBY currently at $36.70. Verizon VZ strikes cell tower deal with AMT. Announces $5 billion share buyback, currently at $48.36 in pre-market, high of $48.45. GLW expects this year to bring another year of growth in core earnings. GLW warning, obviously, indicating a $24.62 this morning. Not a huge amount of activity yet, but again, we're just minutes away from the open. NMM, 4 million shares spot secondary, priced at $13.09. We'll get into the syndicates in the morning, but that just came through. Wanted to relay that to you. Currently at $12.85 in pre-market. Bit of a tick down this morning, but again, secondaries tend to be are dilutive for the security, tend to be a negative for the for the equity, at least initially. Let's get into some of the insider transactions that we are picking up this morning. We have ARA Saratoga Resources, 10% owner purchases $5 million worth, another 10% owner purchases $5 million worth. This is SARA, Saratoga Resources, not indicating anything yet, but again, interesting dynamic there. TUES, Tuesday morning, we have yesterday's close actually indicating at $18.63. We have two insider purchases, let's say totaling about 230,000 or so overnight into this morning. This is from a CFO as well. RWC, we have not much volatility this morning, but we do have over a $250,000 purchase. ONCE, Spark Therapeutics, currently indicating $42.56. We have a $2.3 million 10% owner purchase. TCB, We have $155,000 purchase. Not seeing much activity yet. GER is an MLP. We have $156,000 purchase. Goldman Sachs MLP and Energy Renaissance Fund. So again, very interesting on that. Let's continue with the insider purchases here. MRTX, Mirati Therapeutics, we have a $2 million purchase. We'll take a look at PMBC, $190,000 purchase. Waiting, a little bit delayed on the stock on the quotes here, folks. Sorry, indicating $6.99 on PMBC, excuse me, and AMGN, of course. AMGN, we have Amgen currently indicating $154.36 in pre-market here, just under a $500,000 purchase by a director. Let's get into some of the syndicates. We mentioned a syndicate earlier in NMM, ATVI. We have Activision Blizzard currently indicating at $20.50, 41.5 million share of common stock. Files to sell 41.5 million shares of common stock for Vivendi. Columbia Pipeline CPPL. And there you have the U.S. Open here, and we're looking at the futures higher by 5.75 points at 2060.50. So again, we'll see how that progresses. Sorry, folks, we're having a little bit of delay in these chart here. We'll get back to the presentation here. Dave & Buster's PLAY. We have 6.6 million shares, secondary priced at $29.50. We have Easterly Government Properties DEA 12 million share IPO priced at $15. Emerald Oil EOX files to sell 25 million of common stock. MTSI 7.8 million shares, secondary priced at $30. And Navios Maritime Partners, NMM, as we mentioned earlier, files to sell 4 million common units for limited partners. OHRP files automatic common stock shelf. ONTY files to sell common stock and Series B convertible preferred stocks, a bit of a mixed shelf there. On ONTY, OHGI files to sell 3.28 shares of common stock for holders, and PLD files to sell 750 million of common stock at the market in PLD. See if we can. PLD ProLogic, so currently at $45.57. Interesting that they're indicating at the market. So again, having clearly a negative impact, not a huge negative impact on the stock, but again, down about 0.5% in PLD. STL, Sterling Bancorp, we have currently at $13.50. 6 million shares, secondary price at $13. It is higher by about 0.75% this morning. TROV files automatic common stock shelf, and TROV currently this morning at $4.50. WFBI files to sell 1.37 million shares of common stock in WFBI. And really no movement there yet this morning. So, folks, let's recap the market this morning. We have the S&P futures higher by four handles, currently at 2058.75. Actually, just ticked down a little bit now, up 3 handles at 2058. A little bit volatile move there. We have the VIX currently at 16.44. We have crude oil higher by 94 cents, still within that 50-51 range at $51.42. We have gold lower by $19.40 at $1,243. We have the 10-year a bit below that 1.9 level. Remember, we were above that 1.9 level just a bit earlier in the show at 1.893. The dollar maintaining its upward move here, higher by 0.826 at 94.384. The euro in that 113 handle, 1.1358, lower by 0.0121. So again, anticipating for volume to continue. Want to hear what's going to come out of the next few days out of Moscow specifically, if we get any resolution, or at least interesting to hear some rhetoric on both sides from Moscow and Angela Merkel. Certainly keeping an eye on Greece developments, and of course we'll see how oil settles today. Folks, thanks for listening. This has been Unusual Activity, powered by FinancialJuice.com with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. Thank you for joining us. We wish you a great weekend and good hunting.